I had no idea how drastically my life would alter that night. At 40, I thought I had seen it all. I had been married to Tom for 15 years. He was a devoted husband and father to our two kids, and we shared a beautiful suburban home in Boston. Even while everything seemed perfect on the surface, I frequently felt as though something was lacking, a spark that had faded with time, because our lives had fallen into a cozy routine. However, I never thought that flame would rekindle in such a surprising way. It all began when Tom's younger brother, Daniel, came to be with us for a few weeks. Daniel had always been the charming one, 5 years younger than Tom, with a freewheeling attitude that made him the center of attention at every family event. He was attractive, with dark, wavy hair and a smile that could brighten up any room. Tom was more restrained and focused on his profession, but Daniel was outgoing and spontaneous, constantly looking for a good time. When Daniel phoned Tom and asked if he could remain with us while his apartment was being refurbished, I agreed without hesitation. After all, he was family, and we had a lot of space. Tom was overjoyed to have his brother around, and I was eager to help, but I had not anticipated the changes that his presence would bring to our lives. Daniel arrived on a Friday evening, carrying only a duffel bag and his signature grin. "Hey, sis!" He welcomed me with a loving hug as he entered our home. "Thanks for letting me crash here for a while." "Of course, Daniel," I answered, smiling back. "You're always welcome here." Tom joined us in the living room, and the brothers quickly resumed their normal banter, catching up on old times and laughing over childhood memories. I watched them from the kitchen, feeling nostalgic. It had been years since we'd spent so much time together, and I couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement return to my life. The first few days were without incident. Daniel rapidly settled into our home, and his easygoing personality made him a pleasure to be around. He helped with the kids, prepared dinner a few times, and even persuaded Tom and me to take a break from our crazy schedules to have a family game night. It was like a breath of fresh air in the house, and I found myself looking forward to his company more and more. But as the days evolved into weeks, I saw a shift in our relationship. It began with simple gestures. Daniel would catch my eye across the room and give me a mischievous wink, or he'd find an excuse to touch my arm while we were talking. At first, I dismissed it as harmless flirting. After all, that was Daniel's personality. But as time passed, I began to sense a tension between us that I could not ignore. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed and Tom was working late, Daniel and I found ourselves alone in the living room, drinking a bottle of wine. We had been talking about everything and nothing: work, life, the kids, when Daniel abruptly turned to me, his countenance more serious than I had ever seen. "Sarah," he said, his voice low and focused. "Can I ask you something?" I felt a flutter in my gut, but I just nodded. "Of course, Dan, what is on your mind?" He paused for a time, as if considering his comments. "Have you ever felt like something is missing? Like you're just going through the motions, but you're not truly living?" The question caught me off guard, and I could feel my breath catch in my throat. How did he know? How could he see through the facade I'd been putting up for so long? I stared down at my glass, swirling the wine, attempting to collect my thoughts. Sometimes I acknowledged, my voice scarcely rising beyond a whisper. "I sometimes feel that way, but I'm not sure what to do about it." Daniel stretched out and softly touched my hand, shooting lightning through me. "You deserve happiness, Sarah. You deserve to feel alive." I looked up at him, my heart pounding. Something in his eyes made it impossible for me to look away. I knew I should withdraw my hand and maintain our relationship entirely platonic, but I couldn't bring myself to do so. "Daniel," I began, frightened. "We shouldn't—" "Why not?" he asked, his grasp on my hand tightening. "Why can't we be honest with one another? Why can't we admit there is something between us?" His words hung in the air, laden with implications. I could feel the tension between us increasing with each passing day, and for the first time in years, I felt a surge of exhilaration, a thrill I hadn't had in a long time. "We can't do this," I said quietly, more to myself than to him. "Tommy is your brother. This is wrong." "I know it's complicated," Daniel said, his tone genuine, "but I can't control how I feel, and I don't believe you can either." I closed my eyes, attempting to filter out the emotions that were about to overwhelm me. But the truth was he was correct. I couldn't deny my attraction to him, the connection that had been developing between us. It was wrong and I knew it. Nevertheless, it was also undeniable. Before I could say anything else, Daniel leaned in and kissed me. The kiss began softly and tentatively, as if he was giving me a chance to draw away. But when I didn't, it got deeper, his hand going to the back of my neck, bringing me closer. My thoughts screamed at me to stop and push him away, but my body resisted. I kissed him back, my hands moving to his chest and feeling the powerful, steady beat of his heart beneath my fingertips. I knew it was wrong, but at the time, all I could think of was how good it felt to be wanted. When we finally separated, we were both breathing heavily, our hearts thumping in unison. I stared at him, my mind whirling with shame, want, and confusion. "Daniel," I said, my voice quivering, "we cannot do this. This is wrong." "I know," he said, his hand still on my neck, his thumb lightly stroking my skin. "But I do not regret it. Do you?" I glanced into his eyes for any indication of hesitation, but all I saw was sincerity. He meant every word, and it terrified me. Because, truthfully, I did not regret it either. But that didn't make things right. "We have to stop," I replied, this time with a harder voice. "We cannot continue doing this. It's unfair to Tom." Daniel nodded, his face pained. "I understand, but that doesn't change my feelings toward you." "I care about you too, Daniel," I said, the words flowing out before I could stop them. "But we can't act on these emotions. It's too dangerous." He moaned, his shoulders sagging in defeat. "You're correct. I do not want to cause any problems between you and Tom. I will keep my distance." I felt a sense of sadness as he spoke, but I knew it was for the best. We couldn't take this any farther. The risk was too high, and the consequences may be catastrophic. The days that followed were full of tension and restraint. Daniel followed his word, avoiding being alone with me, and I tried to concentrate on my marriage, mending the schism that had developed between Tom and me. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't stop thinking about that kiss and how Daniel made me feel. Then one evening, while Tom was out of town for work and the kids were staying with their grandparents, Daniel and I found ourselves alone in the house once more. I'd just finished cleaning the kitchen when I heard a quiet knock on the doorframe. I turned to see Daniel standing there with a serious expression. "Sarah," he said, his voice low and intense. "We need to talk." I felt my heart skip a beat, a mix of terror and excitement churning in my chest. "What is it, Daniel?" "I can't keep pretending everything is fine," he murmured, moving closer. "I can't keep denying how I feel about you. Daniel, please," I said quietly, my voice shaking. "We agreed. I know what we agreed," he said, his gaze fixed on mine. "I can't help it, Sarah. I am falling for you, and I suppose you're also falling for me." His comment struck me like a ton of bricks, and I felt my breath freeze in my throat. He was correct, of course. I tried to reject it and push it away, but the truth was that I felt feelings for him. And the more time we spent together, the stronger our sentiments grew. "I don't know what to do," I said, tears welling in my eyes. "I love Tom, but I can't stop thinking about you. I don't want to come between you and my brother," Daniel murmured softly, reaching out to gently wipe away a tear that had fallen down my cheek. "But I can't get away from it either. Not without knowing if there is something genuine between us." The air between us was thick with tension, and I realized I was at a crossroads. I could either walk away from Daniel and try to save my marriage, or I could succumb to the feelings that had been developing between us and risk everything. Before I could make a decision, Daniel closed the distance between us and kissed me again, this time with greater desperation and passion. My willpower weakened, and I kissed him back, my hands entwined in his hair as I drew him closer. The next few hours were a jumble of emotions: want, remorse, and terror. We succumbed to the attraction that had been boiling under the surface, immersing ourselves in the present. It was exciting, but it was also wrong, and I knew the repercussions would be severe. When it was over, we lay together on the couch, the truth of what we had done gradually seeping in. I felt a strong sense of remorse and regret, but also a peculiar sense of fulfillment, as if I had discovered something that had been lacking in my life for so long. But that sensation of accomplishment was fleeting, as the weight of our deeds began to fall on me like a heavy cloud. How could I confront Tom now, knowing what I had done? How could I live with myself if I had betrayed the man I loved? As if sensing my distress, Daniel stretched out and held my hand, his touch warm and calming. Sarah, I apologize. I never intended to hurt you. I know, I said quietly, tears flowing down my cheeks. But we've made a mess of it, Daniel. I'm not sure how to remedy this. We'll figure it out, he replied softly, his thumb lightly stroking the back of my hand. I'm here for you, no matter what. But his words provided little comfort. The truth of our position was daunting, and I realized there were no easy answers or quick remedies. We'd crossed a line, and there was no turning back. The days that followed were among the most hardest of my life. I tried to appear normal, to pretend that everything was all right, but the guilt consumed me. Every time I glanced at Tom, I felt like a phony, like if I were living a lie. The worst part was that I couldn't bring myself to stop things with Dan. Despite the shame and dread, I couldn't let go of the connection we shared. But the more our affair lasted, the more convoluted things grew. The lies and secrets were ripping me apart, and I knew everything was about to come crashing down. That moment came one evening, when Tom arrived home earlier than expected after a business trip. Daniel and I had just completed supper and were sitting in the living room, conversing, when the front door unexpectedly opened. I froze, my pulse pounding in my chest, as Tom entered the room, his eyes narrowing as he took in the image in front of him. The air was thick with tension as Tom looked from me to Daniel, mistrust blazing in his eyes. "What's going on here?" he questioned, his voice calm but tinged with rage. "Tom, it's not what you think," I said, my voice shaking. But I realized it was too late. The truth was written all over my face, and Tom saw it. He looked at me for a long time, his expression a mix of hurt and betrayal. "Sarah, how could you do this to me? How could you betray me with my own brother?" "I'm so sorry," I said quietly, tears flowing down my cheeks. "I never meant for this to happen." Tom shook his head, his eyes filled with a deep pain that pierced me to the heart. "I trusted both of you. So this is how you repay me?" Daniel rose, his expression one of remorse. "Tom, I apologize. I never intended to hurt you." But Tom did not want to hear it. "Get out," he urged, his voice shaking from emotion. "Both of you, get out of my house!" I wanted to say something, to explain, but the words would not come. I rose up on wobbly legs, my heart shattering as I realized the gravity of what I'd done. I had ruined my marriage and my family, and there was no way to save it. As I left the house, I could hear Tom's angry and pained voice calling after us. "I never want to see either of you again." The following several weeks were a haze of sorrow and remorse. I moved in with a friend, hoping to give Tom the space he needed to digest what had happened. Daniel and I didn't say anything because we ran out of things to say. The affair that had once filled us with enthusiasm had now left nothing but destruction in its wake. In the end, I realized I had only myself to blame. I had allowed my emotions to cloud my judgment, and I had taken decisions that I would regret for the rest of my life. The spark I had been looking for had come at an exorbitant cost, and I had lost everything that genuinely meant to me in the process. As I reflected on those weeks, I realized how fragile relationships can be, how quickly damaged by a moment of weakness, and I realized I'd be carrying the weight of that knowledge for the rest of my life.